In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God, amen, my beloved in Christ. The sharpest pain an enemy can feel is realizing their attack made you stronger instead of weaker. Now imagine this for a moment. Chosen one. A whole group gathers behind closed doors, whispering in corners, tossing out plans like cards on a table, believing they found a way to break you. They think their strategy is foolproof, their numbers unshakable, their unity enough to crush you. But here's the twist that shakes their core. The universe has already turned the tables before they even made their move. Their so-called attack didn't just miss, it ricocheted, and now they are the ones choking on the smoke of their own fire. Is a fact that screams you are absolutely right. Every time history records a collective attack on someone who was underestimated, the attackers end up destroying themselves. The Spanish Inquisition, the witch trials, the smear campaigns that brought down their own architects. All of them thought they were too clever, too powerful, too united. But here is the truth. The universe always places a mirror in front of malice. It doesn't matter how loud the mob is, lies eventually collapse under their own weight. That's exactly what's happening with your enemies right now. The bad news that landed in their lap, you outsmarted their spiritual ambush before it even had the chance to breathe. And thank you, chosen one, for being here. Many don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing like and subscribing so this light spreads to more souls. It's the responsibility of all of us to protect each other and keep this mission alive. You are part of something bigger, a force that moves through us all. And your presence here matters. So thank you, chosen one, for standing tall and being part of this wave of strength. Now let's return to what really matters. The news your enemies just received is not just a loss, it's humiliation. They thought you were easy prey, but in their arrogance, they overlook the fact that you've already grown sharper, stronger, and untouchable. Think of it like chess. While they were celebrating a clever move, they didn't notice you had already checkmated them 3 turns earlier. They underestimated your patience, your insight, your resilience. That's why their bad news is hitting so hard. They never expected you to rise from their trap with your head high and your path clearer than ever. The truth is, chosen one, they didn't just lose. They exposed themselves. Their little group that once looked intimidating now looks foolish, scrambling to cover the cracks, whispering excuses to each other. What was supposed to be their triumph has become their disgrace. And the universe in its perfect timing let them taste the bitterness of their own schemes. That's why they can't believe what just happened. They believed numbers could overpower clarity, but your wisdom outmaneuvered their chaos. They believed tricks could rewrite your destiny. But destiny doesn't take instructions from the bitter and the jealous. Their worst news is not simply that you survived, it's that you thrived. You walked away from their fire without a burn. While they stand coughing in the ashes of their own creation, they realize now that what they called a spiritual attack turned into a lesson written across their own lives. Attack someone aligned with truth and you'll only reveal your own weakness. That's why their eyes follow you. Why whispers run through their circles, why panic has spread among them. He didn't just outlast them, you outsmarted them. And now they can't explain how. And here's the irony that bites the hardest. They thought they were writing your ending, but instead they authored their own downfall. They believed they were orchestrating a grand performance, but all they did was hand you the stage while the curtain fell on their act. The bad news they're swallowing is this: no matter how loud their plans, no matter how united their malice, the universe always favors the one who walks with authenticity. That's you, chosen one. You are not the victim of their script. You are the twist that ruined their story. So, chosen one, before we go further, I want you to pause for a second and really feel this moment. Your enemies already got the bad news. They couldn't break you. They couldn't trap you. And now they left confused while you stand untouched. That's why this message is powerful, and that's why you're here. If you're ready to claim your strength and show the universe that you were never the victim but the plot twist, drop the word 777 in the comments right now. And if you feel called, bless this mission with your support. Whether it's a like, a share, or even a small gift, it all fuels the light we're spreading together. Every bit helps this voice rise above the noise of negativity. And thank you, chosen one, for being a force with us, because what we are about to uncover will shake their illusions to the core. And now, let's dive into it step by step. Stay with me till the end, because if you've truly outsmarted their spiritual attack, you will feel every word of this message pulling at your soul. Let's get started. Number one, they attacked your body but collided with your spirit of steel. The cruelest punishment for an enemy is to watch their sharpest weapon bend like rubber against the one they swore they could destroy. That's exactly what happened here, chosen one. They came swinging, thinking they had mapped out every weakness in you. They believed if they cut off your resources, whispered poison into ears, or tried to choke your reputation, you would fold like paper. They wanted to see you stumble. They wanted to watch you crawl. But instead, they were forced to witness something far more brutal to their pride. You didn't even flinch. Their so-called strike landed, but it was like trying to stab smoke. Their plans bounced back, leaving them embarrassed and confused. Now imagine this for a moment. A group of hunters gather in the forest, convinced they've cornered a deer. They prepare their traps, their arrows, their nets. But when they spring forward, it isn't a deer staring back at them, it's a lion. That's the reality your enemies are choking on right now. They prepared for fragile flesh, but collided with an unshakable spirit that can't be trapped or broken. This is why they're restless. This is why the bad news spreads in the circles like wildfire. And here's the fact that seals it. When people plan against the flesh, they are always defeated by the unseen force of resilience. History shows it. Armies crumble when their opponents refuse to fight on the terms they expect. The Persians thought sheer numbers would crush the Greeks at Marathon. Yet the Greeks fought with a spirit that outlasted muscle. The British Empire thought hunger and despair would silence colonized nations. Yet the spirit of resistance outlasted centuries of chains. Flesh can be bruised, but spirit endures. And that's what drives enemies insane. So why are they so devastated, chosen one? Because every weapon they pulled was aimed at what they could see. They slandered you thinking words could erase your worth. They cut off connections thinking your network was your lifeline. They tried to isolate you hoping loneliness would break your will. But here's what they didn't calculate. You don't stand on surface ground. You stand rooted in something untouchable. Something that doesn't depend on applause or approval. That's the part they never had access to. That's the part they will never control. And let's answer the question they're screaming inside their heads right now. How did we fail when we had everything in our favor? The answer is brutal. They fought with shallow weapons, and you fought with depth. They brought numbers, you brought clarity. They brought lies, you brought truth. They brought hate, you carried alignment with the universe. They brought panic, you answered with calmness. They never stood a chance because their power was external while yours was internal. That's why their spiritual attack collapsed before it even took shape. Think of it like this: they expected you to fight back like a cornered animal, snarling, scratching, desperate. But instead you walked through their storm like someone strolling in the rain with an umbrella. Every drop of negativity they sent your way became nothing more than background noise. And the more you ignored their chaos, the more it ate them alive. Because nothing terrifies an enemy more than watching their strongest efforts fail to stir you. It's like a boxer throwing their best punch and watching the opponent smile back. It breaks their spirit more than any counter punch ever could. And here's the twist they didn't see coming. Every single move they made to weaken you became fuel for your growth. Their gossip sharpened your discipline. Their betrayal sharpened your awareness. Their rejection taught you self-reliance. Their plots became your training ground, and you walked out of it stronger than you ever thought possible. They thought they were digging your grave, but all they really did was dig their own embarrassment. Now look at them. Their eyes dart when your name is mentioned. Their circles are full of nervous whispers. They expected news of your collapse, but instead, the only news they're forced to swallow is this: you outsmarted them. And the sting of it, they didn't lose to luck. They lost to your spirit, your endurance, your ability to walk through fire without smelling of smoke. That's why they sit restless now, playing back every step in their mind, asking themselves, where did we go wrong? But you already know the answer. Chosen one. They went wrong the moment they believed flesh was the battlefield. They forgot that the universe sides with resilience, not malice. They forgot that the strongest foundation is invisible. And they forgot that someone who has sharpened their spirit cannot be shaken by shallow attacks. Their strategy was never spiritual. It was carnal, short-sighted, fragile. That's why the collapse came swiftly, and why they're stuck now, nursing the wounds of their own arrogance. Here's the final insult to their injury. Their attacks became your promotion. Their betrayal became your elevation. Their lies became your proof. Their rejection became your stage. The very weapons they thought would break you became the very tools that trained you. That's why you're walking taller while they sit smaller. That's why you've moved forward while they remain stuck in their cycle of plotting and failing. So let this sink deep, chosen one. You didn't just survive their attack, you humiliated it. You turned their fire into your forge. You took their traps and turned them into stepping stones. And the loudest news echoing through their group right now is this: you are not flesh alone. You are spirit, and spirit doesn't crumble. Spirit outsmarts, spirit endures, spirit wins. Number two, they fought your shadow, but the real you was already gone. The most devastating defeat an enemy can suffer is realizing they've been swinging at a ghost all along. That's exactly the news echoing through their circles right now. They plotted against you with confidence, thinking they knew every weakness you carried. But here's the truth that crushed them. You're not even the same person they prepared to fight. They made war on your past, but your past is buried. And the person who rose from those ashes is someone their strategies were never designed to confront. Imagine this chosen one. A thief shows up at a house with an old key, grinning because he remembers how easily that door used to swing open. He jiggles the lock, shoves harder, even kicks in frustration. But what he doesn't know is that the locks have been changed, the security system upgraded, and the owner of the house now stands ready on the inside with unshakable confidence. That's your enemies right now, furious, confused, and humiliated as they realize their old tricks don't work anymore. Here's a brutal fact they can't stomach. Enemies always fight with outdated blueprints. They remember the times when you were too trusting, too naive, too unguarded. They remember when lies pierced your skin like arrows, when betrayal left you bleeding, when loneliness felt like a cage you couldn't escape. And because they're stuck in their arrogance, they assumed those same moves would crush you again. But they forgot one thing. The universe doesn't waste pain. Every wound you endured became a lesson. Every loss became armor. Every fall became a stepping stone. And so while they plotted against who you used to be, they failed to realize you've grown into someone they've never met before. Growth is the one weapon no enemy can predict. And transformation is the one battlefield they can never win. That's why they're scrambling now. They launched lies, expecting you to panic. And instead you responded with silence and strength. They tried manipulation, expecting you to take the bait. Instead, you cut the strings they thought still held you. They tried to isolate you, assuming loneliness would drown you. Instead, solitude became your training ground, sharpening your clarity like a blade. They came with old maps, but the territory has changed. And now they're lost in a war they can't even comprehend. Picture this. A boxer trains for months to exploit the weaknesses of his opponent. He studies old tapes, memorizes every flaw, prepares counters for every habit. But when the fight begins, he realizes the opponent isn't the same anymore. Faster, stronger, sharper, transformed. Every move he practiced is useless, and every swing leaves him exposed. That's your enemies right now. They studied an outdated version of you. And the shock they're choking on is that the version they attacked doesn't even exist anymore. And I know what you might be asking yourself. Chosen one, why did they see my growth? Why did they notice the changes? The answer is simple. They didn't want to. Haters are addicted to the story they wrote about you. They cling to the idea that you'll always be weak, always be gullible, always be breakable. That lie feeds their ego. So instead of facing the reality that you've evolved, they double down on old tactics, hoping somehow the past will repeat itself. But the truth, you've outgrown their reach. You've leveled up to a dimension they can't touch, and now their weapons are swinging through thin air. Nothing haunts an enemy more than wasted effort. That's the real sting of their bad news. They spent hours plotting, gathering, whispering, and strategizing, only to realize they've been throwing punches at shadows. Their weapons are useless. Their tactics are stale. Their victories are illusions. And instead of admitting they lost, they turn on each other, blaming, doubting, panicking. Because the hardest pill for them to swallow is that the real you is unrecognizable to the games of your past. Now imagine this chosen one. Someone digs a pit perfectly measured to trap you. They pat themselves on the back, certain they've predicted your steps. But when you walk by, you don't fall in. You leap higher, stepping over their trap without a second thought. They stand frozen, staring into the pit they dug, realizing they wasted their effort. That's the frustration boiling in your enemies right now. They thought they had you measured, but transformation rewrote your path, and now they're left staring into an empty hole. And here's another truth. Transformation is the greatest shield. While they bet on your fears, you built courage. While they calculated your silence, you grew wisdom. While they leaned on your brokenness, you stitched yourself whole. Every attempt they made to summon the old you only revealed the futility of their schemes. That's why the bad news has hit them so hard, they aimed their arrows at someone who doesn't even exist. But let's be brutally honest. The news that's tearing them apart isn't just that their attacks failed, it's that you become untouchable. They can't pin you down anymore. They can't predict you. They can't rattle you. And nothing terrifies a hater more than realizing the target has outgrown their entire arsenal. They're trapped in yesterday's war while you've already built tomorrow's victory. It's like they're still playing checkers, moving slowly, predictably, while you've already mastered chess on another board entirely. The past is a graveyard. Only fools try to fight the dead. But your enemies don't understand this. They're still swinging at the ghost of who you used to be, demanding that the old wounds reopen, waiting for the old fears to rise again. And every time they fail, their frustration deepens. They can't accept that you're no longer trapped in their narrative. They can't accept that their control expired the moment you evolved. So here's their reality now, chosen one. They wasted time, energy, and pride fighting shadows while you quietly became untouchable. They thought they could control the script of your life, but you rewrote the story. They thought they could pull you back into the same cycles, but you broke them for good. And now the news running through their group is this: their enemy doesn't even exist anymore. They aimed at your ghost, but the living, breathing, powerful version of you is far beyond their reach. And let that sink in, because nothing burns an enemy more than wasted time. Nothing humiliates them more than realizing every scheme, every lie, every attack was aimed at someone who no longer walks this earth. They've been fighting your shadow while you've already risen into light they can't dim. That's the devastation they're facing. That's the nightmare they can't escape. And that's why their circle is restless. Because you, chosen one, have outgrown the battlefield, and they are left punching the air. Number 3, the more they tried to shackle you, the more explosive you became. The sickest joke life plays on your enemies is this: the harder they push you down, the higher you rebound. That's what's killing them right now. They wanted to wrap chains around you, silence you, cage you like a bird. But every link they tightened only made you discover another hidden weapon within yourself. They planned a prison. Instead, they built you a forge. Now imagine this for a moment. Chosen one, a group of enemies digs a deep hole waiting for you to fall. They sit around it, laughing, certain that once you step inside, you're done. But here's the twist. They forgot that you've learned how to climb. Not only did you escape the pit, but you came up with new muscles, new vision, new strength. And when you stood at the edge looking down at them, they realized they weren't your captors at all. They were your trainers. Here's a fact that rips them apart. Pressure doesn't break chosen ones. It detonates gifts. Science proves it. Coal turns into diamonds. only under extreme force. Steel is hardened only under fire. Earthquakes expose hidden rivers underground. And you were no different. Every curse they spat, every rumor they spread, every attempt to box you in, those weren't chains, those were weights. And lifting those weights turn you into a giant they'll never be able to face. The same, weights, the Wayne, 2 minutes. Lifting those weights turned you into a giant they'll never be able to face. Let's be real for a second. Why do they look so confused now? Because they thought you'd react like the old you, crying, begging, folding under pressure. Instead, you responded like someone who had already leveled up. You didn't just endure the fire, you became fire. And nothing terrifies an enemy more than realizing the very storm they created only sharpened your lightning. What was meant to suffocate you became the oxygen that woke you up. That's the nightmare gnawing at them. They thought lies would crush your name, but those lies taught you how to stand without their approval. They thought betrayal would ruin your trust, but betrayal taught you to read snakes before they strike. They thought isolation would break you, but isolation gave you a clarity they can't even dream of. Every time they tried to bind you, you shed another layer of weakness and unlocked another hidden gift. Imagine this, they were smiths, hammering on what they thought was weak metal, but with every strike, you only grew stronger until you became unbreakable. They wanted ashes instead. They created a diamond. They wanted silence. Instead, they created a roar. They wanted your ending. Instead, they authored your beginning. The cruelest punishment for an enemy is knowing they became the architects of your strength. That's the bad news racing through their camp right now. They can't accept that their hate built your power. They can't process that their curses became your keys. And the part that keeps them awake at night, without them, you might not have unlocked half the gifts you carry today. They handed you your crown while trying to bury you. So, chosen one, understand this truth. They didn't bind you, they revealed you. They didn't weaken you, they weaponized you. And every attempt they made to limit you only proved what the universe already knew. You were never meant to be contained. Number 4, your survival became their public execution. The most brutal punishment for an enemy is not your revenge, it's your survival. And that's the dagger twisting in them right now. They plotted every detail, whispered in shadows, and threw every card on the table with one goal in mind: erase you, erase your voice, erase your presence. They imagined you breaking, begging, folding under the weight of their attacks, but instead you're here, alive, unshaken, thriving. And that fact alone is the loudest evidence of their defeat. Imagine this for a second. Chosen one. A firing squad lines up, convinced the target will fall. They pull the triggers. Smoke fills the air. But when it clears, you're still standing. No wounds, no flinch, just you staring back while their hands tremble with disbelief. That's the humiliation your enemies live with. They expected to celebrate your disappearance. Instead, your existence itself has become their nightmare. Here's a hard fact they can't escape. Survival is louder than destruction. Every curse they spat, every manipulation they spun, every rumor they whispered, it was smoke and mirrors, theater without substance. They believed their weapons were sharp, but in truth, they were hollow blades shattering against stone. And now they choke on the reality that you weren't fragile like they thought. You didn't just survive, you walked out untouchable. And let's answer the question they keep asking themselves in circles. How are you still standing? The answer is cruelly simple. Their power was never real. Their strategies were built on illusions. They mistook intimidation for control, confusion for victory, lies for truth. But illusions collapse under time, and when the smoke cleared, all that remained was you. Stronger, clearer, undeniable. Every breath you take is another nail in their coffin of failure. That's why even the smallest sign of your presence burns them. Every step you take forwards feels like a slap in their face. Every achievement you make screams their weakness louder than you ever could. They thought silence would cover their tracks, but your survival became the evidence, the spotlight, the courtroom verdict they can't appeal. Picture it like this: they tried to bury you under rubble, expecting you to suffocate. But instead you emerged from the dust, not crawling but walking tall. Proof that not only did their attack fail, but it actually staged your rebirth. And now with every move you make, you remind them that they were powerless all along. That's the ultimate humiliation, chosen one. You didn't need revenge. You didn't need to strike back. Your survival became the execution of their schemes. The undeniable proof that they wasted everything on nothing. And every day you live, breathe, and rise higher. You carve their defeat deeper into the story they can't rewrite. Number 5, while they crawled in the dirt, you rose untouchable above them. The surest way to humiliate an enemy is to let them swing at shadows while you rise where their hands can never reach. That's exactly what happened, chosen one. They thought you'd meet them in the mud. Gossip for gossip, insult for insult, attack for attack. They were desperate for a messy fight where they could measure your strength and convince themselves they still had power over you. But you refused. You denied them the drama they craved, and in doing so you robbed them of their only weapon, attention. Now imagine this. A group of bitter rivals gathers at the bottom of a mountain, shouting threats, throwing stones upward, demanding you come down and fight them on their level. But you don't move. Instead, you keep climbing higher, each step placing more distance between their chaos and your calm. Soon, their stones don't even reach you anymore, and their voices fade into echoes. That's the battlefield shift that's driving them insane. You fought on higher ground and their strategies became useless. Here's the fact that eats them alive when you refuse to engage at their frequency. Their weapons dissolve. Lies need reactions to survive. Manipulations need attention to grow. Gossip needs conflict to spread. You gave them nothing. And by giving them nothing, you gave yourself everything. Their curses bounced off air. Their traps snapped shut on emptiness. Their schemes collapse under the weight of their own futility. And let's be blunt, why are they so frustrated now? Because they were counting on your rage, your retaliation, your descent into their pit. They imagined you tangled in the same petty games, sweating, clawing, wasting energy just to prove yourself. But instead, you moved with silence, precision, and calm. You became a ghost to their attacks, untouchable, unreachable, a force they couldn't track. Nothing enrages an enemy more than realizing they can't even get your attention. When you refuse to step into the mud, your enemies drown in it alone. That's the reality choking them. While they wasted nights scheming and morning spreading rumors, you were busy building, rising and winning. Their obsession became their exhaustion. Their bitterness became their downfall. Every ounce of energy they spent trying to drag you down only tightened their own chains of paranoia and failure. Picture it this way. They were shadow boxing, sweating and swinging, convinced they were landing blows. But when the lights turned on, they saw they were fighting air. Meanwhile, you were already 10 steps ahead, thriving where they couldn't reach. Your very elevation became the ultimate insult. They expected confrontation, but got your calm ascendancy instead. And that's the cruelest twist for them. You didn't just survive their attacks, you made them irrelevant by refusing to fight on their level. You preserved your energy, protected your spirit, and exposed the emptiness of their weapons. Their chaos only highlighted your clarity. Their noise only magnified your silence. Their weakness only underscored your strength. This is why your progress burns them more than any counterattack ever could. You didn't just avoid their traps, you rendered them invisible. You didn't descend into their dirt, you soared untouchable. And now they're left confused, frustrated and powerless, staring upward at the one thing they'll never touch, you. Number 6, their alliance of snakes became the noose around their necks. When enemies unite in hate, they don't form an army, they build a ticking time bomb that always explodes from the inside. That's the brutal truth eating them alive right now. They believed numbers would give them power. They thought standing shoulder to shoulder, whispering, plotting, and feeding each other's bitterness would make them unstoppable. But their so-called unity was never strength. It was poison disguised as strategy. Imagine this for a moment. Chosen one? A group of wolves circle snarling, convinced their pack will overwhelm the prey. But the prey doesn't move. Instead, the wolves turn on each other, teeth bared, fighting for dominance, tearing each other apart. That's your enemy's reality. They weren't allies, they were rivals wearing masks. And the second pressure came. Their fake loyalty collapsed into suspicion, paranoia, and betrayal. Here's the fact they never understood. The Leometer through unity requires purpose, but their alliance was built on envy. Envy doesn't bind, it corrodes. History proves it. Every empire held together by greed and jealousy eventually devours itself. Their circle was nothing more than a fragile chain of resentment, and every link was rusting before it ever touched you. And let's answer the question you might be asking. Why did they even come together in the first place? Because they couldn't stand you shining alone. Your very existence exposed what they lacked, so they clung to each other, mistaking shared hatred for strength. But hatred doesn't unify, it isolates. They weren't collaborating, they were competing. Each one wanted to be the loudest, the smartest, the most dangerous. And that hunger for dominance made their alliance weaker with every passing day. A kingdom built on spite collapses faster than one attacked by fire. That's why their so-called brotherhood shattered into chaos. Arguments sprouted, doubt spread, whispers turned into accusations. What they thought was strength in numbers became weakness in multiplication. The more of them there were, the more cracks appeared, until their alliance became a circus of paranoia and lies. Picture it clearly. While they scrambled to hold their shaky circle together, you stood alone, calm, steady, untouchable. They wasted all their energy policing each other, questioning loyalties, doubting intentions. And in that chaos, you rose higher, unbothered. Their obsession with destroying you blinded them to the fact that they were already destroying themselves. And that's the humiliation they live with now. Their unity was nothing more than a facade, a mask crumbling under its own weight. What they called their greatest weapon became the very noose that tightened around their throats. Their envy, their mistrust, their instability, all combined to prove that their numbers weren't a strength at all. They were the exact reason for their defeat. Number 7, they tried to drown you in fear, but you drank it and spat out clarity. Fear is the oldest trick of cowards. It looks powerful until someone stands still long enough to see it's only smoke. That's the dagger twisting in your enemies right now. They counted on fear to chain you, convinced intimidation would freeze your steps, cloud your vision, and silence your voice. Fear was supposed to be their master stroke, their invisible leash around your neck, but instead you used it as fuel. And the very weapon they trusted became the torch that exposed their weakness. Imagine this, chosen one. A magician tries to terrify the crowd with shadows on the wall, monsters that look enormous in the dark. The audience gasps until someone flips on the light and sees it was only a small puppet in his hand. That's what you did. They tried to spook you with whispers, rumors, and manipulations, hoping you'd panic. But you didn't flinch. You studied the shadows until you saw the puppet strings. And once you saw the strings, their entire act collapsed. Here's the fact they never accounted for. Fear doesn't the wise, it sharpens them. Soldiers train under live fire, not to be destroyed by it, but to learn its rhythm, its sound, its timing. That's what you did. Their threats became drills. Their chaos became training exercises. Every attempt to freeze you gave you another revelation about their habits, their cycles, their patterns. Instead of shrinking, you expanded. Instead of confusion, you gained clarity. And let's answer the question they're choking on now. How did fear fail when it works on everyone else? The answer is brutal. Fear only controls the blind, but once you see through it, it becomes powerless. They thought you'd tremble. Instead, you started mapping their every move. They thought you'd hesitate. Instead, you anticipated. They thought you'd bow. Instead, you elevated. Their strategy didn't paralyze you. It exposed them. The weapon of fear always backfires when aimed at someone who refuses to blink. That's the nightmare keeping them up at night, because every scare tactic they threw only made you wiser, calmer, more untouchable. What they thought would cage you became the compass guiding your next steps. And now, while they remain trapped in the same loops of paranoia, you walk freely, untethered, with eyes wide open. Picture it clearly. They built a maze of fear, certain you'd run in circles until exhaustion broke you. But instead, you climbed above the maze, saw every corner, every dead end, every trap. You didn't just escape, you learned the layout. And now you carry the map they never wanted you to have. That's why your presence burns them like acid. They invested everything in fear, but fear only revealed their weakness. They handed you revelation, insight, and discernment on a silver platter. And the cruel irony, they taught you how to defeat them. They tried to drown you in terror, but you drank it, spat out clarity, and now stand above them, unshaken, untouchable, and devastatingly aware. Number 8, they tried to script your downfall, but you hold the pen. The cruelest defeat for an enemy is realizing the story they wrote about you will never be published because you're the one holding the pen. That's the dagger lodged deep in their pride right now. They tried to script your ending, convinced they could reduce your entire life into a chapter of weakness and defeat. They spread lies like ink, drafted rumors like paragraphs, and hoped the world would read their version of you. But every page they scribbled was exposed as fiction the moment you stood tall and kept writing your own story. Imagine this, chosen one. A group of envious critics sit around a table editing your life like they're writing a cheap novel. They cross out your victories, insert failures, and twist your image into something ugly. But while they're busy with their counterfeit drafts, you are already publishing a masterpiece in real time. By the time their lies hit the street, the truth of your actions, resilience, and strength had already gone global. Their little story didn't just flop, it was laughed off as bad fiction. Here's the fact that slices them open. Lies never survive next to lived truth. History proves it. Every smear campaign eventually collapses under the weight of reality. They try to define you by slander, but your presence redefined the entire narrative. They wanted people to see weakness, but your resilience screams strength louder than their whispers ever could. And let's answer the question that keeps them pacing in circles. Why didn't their story stick? Because their pen was dipped in envy, and envy bleeds through the page. Readers can always smell bitterness disguised as truth. Their words didn't expose you, they exposed themselves. Every rumor, every accusation, every false ending said more about their desperation than about your destiny. Each lie they wrote became a footnote in your book of victories. That's the irony, cutting them to pieces. While they crafted fiction, you lived reality. While they plotted your obituary, you launched another chapter. While they rehearsed your funeral, you announced your rebirth. They wanted to control the narrative, but their script collapsed like wet paper against the stone of your truth. Picture it clearly. They were playwrights staging a tragedy, but the audience couldn't stop watching your triumph unfold live. Their curtain never even rose before your spotlight drowned them out. And now they're humiliated, stuck in the shadows of a stage they never owned. That's why they're restless, chosen one, because they know now you were never a character in their cheap novel. You were always the author, writing in ink they couldn't erase. Their plots only fueled your chapters. Their envy only sharpened your pen, and their bad news, the ending they wanted, will never come, because the story was never theirs to write. It's yours, and you're still in the middle of your masterpiece. Number 9, their shadows collapsed under the eyes that saw everything. Secrecy is only power until it stands in front of someone who can see in the dark. That's the blow tearing through your enemies right now. They thought whispers in hidden rooms, silent glances, and backdoor plots would protect them. They believed shadows would keep you blind, stumbling, and vulnerable. But what they didn't calculate is that your gift of discernment burns brighter than their secrecy ever could. You didn't just see their moves, you understood their motives before they could act. Imagine this chosen one, a thief, cuts the lights, confident that darkness will keep him unseen. But he doesn't realize the person he's stalking can see perfectly in the night. He tiptoes, smirks, thinking he's clever, only to look up and realize you've been watching the whole time. That's the humiliation your enemies live with. They thought silence kept them hidden, but your clarity turned every whisper into a confession. Here's the fact that destroys their pride. Discernment doesn't need evidence. It reads energy. You saw the patterns behind their secrecy. You recognize the repetition of their tricks. You sense the motives buried under their words. While they scrambled to cover their tracks, you already knew the destination. That's why their weapon of secrecy shattered. They mistook shadows for protection, forgetting the truth shines through every disguise. And let's answer the question burning in their minds. How did you know? How did you always stay one step ahead? The answer is brutal. You listened deeper than their lies could reach. You noticed details they thought were invisible. You trusted the clarity that secrecy cannot silence. While they relied on silence, you relied on vision, and vision always wins. The louder they whispered in secret, the clearer your vision became. That's why their paranoia is eating them alive. Every meeting behind closed doors, every coded message, every safe plan, they all became evidence of their fear, not their strength. The secrecy didn't shield them, it exposed them. And now they can't stand the reality that you were never caught off guard. Picture it clearly. They laid a chessboard in the dark, convinced you'd stumble over the pieces. But you didn't just play, you flipped on the light, saw every piece, every angle, every trap. By the time they made their hidden move, you'd already countered it. They weren't predators lurking in shadow. They were children hiding under a blanket, thinking no one could see them. And that's the cruel irony, chosen one. Their greatest advantage, secrecy, was their biggest downfall. They thought it made them powerful, but it only proved how fragile they were. Their plans weren't invisible, they were predictable. Their whispers weren't hidden, they were loud to the ears of discernment. They thought you were blind, but you were watching the whole time. That's the crushing news. They can't escape. Their shadows offered no cover. Their silence gave them no edge. And their secrecy became the noose tightening around their own schemes. You walked through their darkness untouched while they remained trapped in the very shadows they trusted to protect them. Number 10, they mistook your pause for their triumph. Only fools throw a victory party in the middle of the race. That's the bitter truth your enemies are choking on right now. They saw your pauses, your quiet seasons, the moments where progress wasn't loud or visible, and they clapped like they'd won. In their arrogance, they mistook incubation for collapse. They confused silence with defeat. They mistook strategy for stagnation. And now, watching your breakthrough erupt like thunder, they realize they celebrated too soon. Imagine this chosen one. A farmer plants seeds and covers them in soil. From the surface, it looks like nothing is happening. Days pass, weeks pass, and still the ground looks bare. Neighbors laugh, mocking the empty field. But then the rain comes, the roots push deep, and suddenly the harvest explodes all at once. Unstoppable, undeniable. That's your story. While they mocked your stillness, you were growing underground, building strength they couldn't see. What they thought was your end was simply your preparation. Here's the fact that slices their pride open. Delays aren't denials, they're setups. Every pause in your life, every slow moment, every setback they pointed at with laughter was a stage being built for your elevation. They saw you standing still, but in reality, timing was working in your favor. History proves this. Many of the greatest victories arrive not in haste, but through patience. Empires crumble fast. Legacies are built slow. They celebrated too early because they didn't understand the power of patience. And let's answer the question burning in their minds. How did we think we won when we clearly didn't? The answer is cruel. They measured the wrong things. They looked for speed while you were building longevity. They looked for noise while you were building substance. They looked for quick collapse while you were quietly forging endurance. Their timeline was shallow, yours was eternal. Every delay you endured was the universe stretching a bowstring, preparing to launch you further than they could ever imagine. That's why your rise hit them like a bomb they never saw coming. One moment they were drinking to your downfall, the next They were choking on the smoke of your breakthrough. Their supposed victory dissolved into humiliation because all they ever really won was wasted time. Picture it clearly. They built bonfires to celebrate your stagnation. But when your moment came, your fire consumed theirs, leaving them standing in ashes. They thought they'd stalled you, but your pause only gathered momentum. They thought you were stuck, but your stillness birthed strategy. They thought you were done, but you were only loading. And that's the cruelty of their defeat. Chosen one, their greatest cheers turned into their deepest groans. Their false sense of victory became the memory of their failure. Because in the end, your pause wasn't weakness. It was alignment. It was power disguised as silence. And when the breakthrough erupted, it proved once and for all, delay was never defeat. It was the prelude to a success they will never recover from. Number 11, they poured their fire into your ruin while you fed yours into becoming unstoppable. An enemy's greatest humiliation is realizing every ounce of energy they spent destroying you only watered the roots of your success. That's the dagger twisting in them. Now, while they lost sleep, scheming, whispering, and feeding off each other's bitterness, you invested that same time into sharpening your mind, strengthening your body, and expanding your spirit. They obsessed over your collapse, but you obsessed over your growth. And that difference has left them crushed beneath the weight of their own wasted energy. Imagine this for a moment. Chosen one, two farmers work side by side. One spends his night sneaking into the other's field, trying to trample crops, spread weeds, and ruin soil. The other quietly tills, waters, and plants, seeds of resilience. Months later, one field is barren, poisoned by bitterness, while the other bursts with a harvest so abundant it can't be ignored. That's the humiliation your enemies choke on. You chose growth. They chose destruction, and the results speak louder than any words ever could. Here's the brutal fact: energy follows intention. They directed all of theirs toward your downfall while you directed yours toward expansion. They thought disruption was power, but power has always belonged to the one who builds, not the one who breaks. Every curse they muttered, every rumor they spread, every obstacle they planted only made your resilience multiply. What they tried to use as stumbling blocks became the very stones you stood on to climb higher. And let's answer the question echoing in their minds: why didn't our obsession break them? Why did it only make them stronger? The answer is savage, because while they fed on negativity, you fed on discipline. While they invested in paranoia, you invested in progress. While they wasted their breath plotting against you, you were too busy breathing life into your own future. Their energy evaporated into nothingness. Yours compounded into unstoppable momentum. Every plan they made for your downfall became the backdrop for your rise. That's the cruel irony tearing them apart. They thought chaos would derail you, but chaos became your training ground. They thought envy would poison you, but envy became your confirmation that you were ahead. They thought attacks would drain you, but attacks only taught you how to master your strength. Their greatest effort birthed your greatest version. And that's a reality they can't stomach. Picture it clearly. They gather in secret, burning energy like wildfire, plotting moves that never landed. Meanwhile, you sat quietly at the table of growth, stacking brick on brick, compounding every lesson, every trial, every scar into a fortress of resilience. Now they stand exhausted, drained, broken by their own obsession, while you move with clarity, calmness, and strength they can't touch. And that's the agony for them, chosen one. The very hours they spent watching you are the hours you spent outgrowing them. The very weapons they built against you became the tools that refined you. Their fixation created the evidence of your strength. Their obsession proved your importance. And now the cruelest twist of all is staring them in the face. They became the architects of your elevation. They lit the fire meant to burn you, but you used the flames to forge steel. And every moment they wasted on your downfall will forever be the reminder of how far ahead you'll always be. Chosen one, what your enemies meant for your downfall has only proven your unstoppable rise. Every scheme, every whisper, every false weapon they built has collapsed under the weight of your resilience, and the greatest evidence of their defeat is simple: you are still here, stronger, sharper, untouchable. So, if this message spoke to you, press the like button if you haven't already. And if you're not yet part of our family, make sure to hit subscribe. Together we rise, we shine, and we keep exposing the weakness of those who tried to bury us. Your victory is undeniable.